Hey guys, I got a special treat for you today. The second Killa Kan is all prepped and ready to go, and I'm like, I gotta show this off because but you once it's painted, it'll look so uniform and intentional, but right now you can just see the chaos of what this thing looks like when it's just barely put together. So this, as you can tell, the center body started out as that empty paint pot, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so perfect because I used the paint, I finished off that paint as part of the challenge. So I'm like, how perfect would it be to then use it in a build? So we started with that, and man, I am really, really proud of this thing. It looks so deliciously orky. It's a little bigger than the first Killa Can, but let me grab the. But it's not nearly so big as the Def Dread. So you can kind of see. I think what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and make all of the Killa Cans be somewhere between these two heights. I don't want it any bigger than this, or else it starts getting encroaching on the territory of the Def Dread, and I don't want to cause confusion for my opponent, especially because Killa Cans and Def Dreads for some reason are on the same size bases. I don't understand that one, but there we go. So I uh, I put the little grating and to kind of be the vision slit. So the idea is the grot's behind there. Of course, I don't actually have to show the grot, which is great because I don't have a grot. And I wanted to give it a big old gobber teeth. Now the feet, the legs are actually really cool. If you look, oh man, I don't know if I'm going to get a good angle. Let's try turning on the light. Give you guys a little more. Okay, you can see the legs actually started out as the attachment point for the bulldozer blade for like Imperial tanks, but it was perfect because it had these two big pistons and like a little joint point there for the ankle. So I'm like, oh, that's perfect. So I chopped that up. Oh, there we go. Now you can see good. I chopped that up, and that became the legs. These little parts were left over here, so I'm like, oh, I'll just stick them on the front. Give them a little detail there. I actually started with the intent that this would, man, it's hard to hold the camera, and this would be the toe, and this would be the back. But as I made the front part of the feet, I'm like, no, those two goofy little toes look so good. As you can see, it's real simple. I just layered 4 layers of plastic card there. It's as simple as can be, but I think it turned out really good. The back of the feet are actually. Do you remember the bug legs that I used for the huge rhino conversion? Well, those were the feet of those bug legs, and so I'm like, hey, I got them here. I already chopped them off. Might as well use them for the feet. If I angle it like this, you can really see the paint pot there. And I think I'm going to leave that. And I'll probably even like dry brush the little Games Workshop symbol there. It's a kind of just a little Easter egg because I don't know what it is, but as long as I've played 40K, whenever people pick up a model to inspect it by hand, they always do this. I don't know why. It's like, what do you think you're going to see? They always turn. So I'm like, I'm going to give them a little treat if they turn up there and look up its can. Ha 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 ha. Then happens. So the arm here. This is the Scorch arm that was donated, and the lovingly huge Thunderhammer arm. So I cut off the end of the Scorcha and put on the hand here so that the Scorcha barrels kind of become its forearm, and then wrapped this little uh, green stuff cable around while it was still soft, and I think that looks really good. The hand didn't have a thumb, and it didn't have the back part. There's a bit there that it was missing, so I just kind of created my own thumb using green stuff, and then put some little armor plates to make kind of a fist. Because orcs really like that armored mitten kind of thing. Let me see if I can find a bit that shows it off. Let's see. Oh, here it is. Here's so like if you look at a lot of the orcs, see this little mitten here where their fist goes in. The orcs, it's kind of one of those orky design things that just kind of shows you that something is orky. So I basically just created my own little orky mitten there, and then for the other arm, however, I had to kind of build it from scratch. So it's a couple of sticks, it's some tubes that I made into some pistons, and honestly, the pistons look pretty darn good. Wrap some wire around it, and then, of course, this glorious, glorious shield just made out of sticks and old Empire and Warhammer Fantasy shields and stuff, which I have a lot of. I don't know how I, honestly don't know how I gathered up so much along the way, but I sure have a lot of them. And I was originally going to put the missile launcher on the back, but when I saw how tall it was getting, I was like, no, let's do it somewhere else. So I have this long missile pod that just kind of tucks nicely under the shield arm. It's from an old like aircraft like model kit. There was like a blister pack that I bought years and years ago. It just has tons of rockets and missiles to like go under the wings of like your F-14 Tomcats and stuff like that. And it was like $3, and there was just hundreds of missiles, and I've never run out. I'll probably never run out, but it's a great thing to get. I found a little radar dish there, so I kind of put it on there with some green stuff. Here in the back, it gets real chaotic. It gets real chaotic because I put on a couple. These are actually like the fighter bays from Battlefleet Gothic, but I think they look great as exhaust vents. And of course, I put on some of my tubes, but I kind of messed up. This tube was way too low. This tube was way too high. So I was like, should I break them off and make them more symmetrical? And I'm like, nope, screw it. I'll just put a tube right there to go in between those one on top of that one. And we'll pretend it was intentional. That's right. From the beginning, that was my intention. This was not a mistake. This is the joint for the pot lid. I intentionally left this as is because I want people to know that this is a paint pot lid. That's kind of a point of pride for me. You can see I had to do a lot of green stuff work to create the shoulder mount because the ball joint had nowhere to fit into, so I kind of created this little rubber texture thing, and then I had this great. This is actually a real Killa Kan shoulder plate was donated, and so that covers up most of it. And then at the end, I had like the space at the bottom where just a lot of the paint pot was showing. And I was like, oh, let's just put a tube from there going into the arm, so it's you can kind of see the power goes in there, the power goes through there, and then that energizes the big thunder hammer. And oh man, I got to tell you, this big thunder hammer from the Dread Knight just looks so good. I scuffed it up a whole bunch and orcified it, but man. And because I did that, I was like, well, let's put a power tube going into the back of the shield. So in my mind, this is actually energized, right? Like it's as doofy as it looks. There's actually, in my head canon, there is a power field in that shield. And then if you notice, the arms are just kind of, they're not attached. They're just a little place where they're glued on. So I also glued them to the top of the hips. I had them intentionally leaning against the hips to create a stronger bond. So they're glued there and there, so that when it's being handled, it's not going to snap off. Because I don't know about you guys, I don't like it when models are so frail that you have to like, I can't touch them. And so I intentionally, and I use a lot of glue, but I intentionally make them as strong as I can. So like, for example, back here, this tube is also glued to this tube where they kind of touch there. I just threw some super glue down there. And these pipes are glued to these pipes, and the green tube is glued to the top of these. So by creating these extra glue points, it just kind of strengthens the whole bit. This shoulder joint was actually really easy to create. These tiled ones, you can curve them if you just bend it without snapping it. And so all I had to do was just bend them along their creases, and it creates just enough of an angle that you can wrap it over stuff, and it works real well. But it had a big old gap there, so I just cut one into like a triangle shape, shoved it up in there, and bada bing, bada boom. I'm really proud of this can. This looks so orky, and the fact that it's clearly started life as a paint pot but still looks pretty good is just exactly the spirit of this entire challenge. Just the idea that I'm just going to use leftover stuff and free stuff and These are, for those of you who are new here, these are actually just sticks from my local park that I glued together. There were some gaps, so I put some little plastic rod to kind of cover up the gaps, and then of course the shields do a good job covering the gaps. But once it's all together, it is a pretty solid wall. And you know what? Honestly, this would provide you some actual protection at very, very low cost. Wood is surprisingly good at stopping bullets. You'd be surprised. And then this little hand here is like a leftover hand from a Gundam kit. And of course they got the dowel rods. So we're gonna paint this guy up. I really, really like it. It's so deliciously orky and absurd, and it's gonna just look lovely. But I wanted you guys a chance to see what it looked like before it's painted, so that you can kind of see the process of how it was built, and kind of the thought process behind how I know that for orcs to have a thought process seems absurd, but there it is.